Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this show is Let's Live with Thurman Greco. This is the Woodstock Show, coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock and on YouTube. And we have an interesting show this evening. I have this evening an introductory class in the tarot. And someone has requested this, and I began to look back, and I do teach the tarot, and I began to look back on how open or closed I was to the tarot when I began learning it. And I knew nothing about it. So I think that was one of the things that really captivated me, was the fact that I really didn't know anything about the tarot at all. So I'm going to talk to those of you, those of us, who may not know anything about the tarot, or if you know something about the tarot, you may not know any of the things that I'm going to be teaching this evening. So the first thing that I had to do when I decided to learn the tarot, when I had an opportunity to learn the tarot, was I had to go get a deck of cards. And I knew nothing. I didn't know about how many hundreds of different decks there were, or anything about it. And I ended up, and it was totally by accident, with a Rider-Waite deck. And I recommend that as your first deck. But I do write in my book that you need to find a deck that you are attracted to. But when you walk into a bookstore, and I think of two bookstores right offhand. One is, there is a bookstore in Albany that has several shelves of tarot cards. And there's also one in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, that has many different decks. If you don't know anything about the tarot, that can be very confusing. When I got my deck, it was because that was the only one that was there in the store, and I didn't know any difference, so it was for sale and I bought it, and it was certainly reasonably priced. I did not realize then, and it was years later before I realized what I had purchased. Because what I had purchased was a Rider-Waite deck, which was drawn, the pictures were drawn by Pamela Colman Smith in the beginning of the 1900s, and she was at Pratt. And she had just graduated from Pratt, and she was also very, very interested in the occult. So she actually painted each of the prototypes of each of these cards. Up until the time that she did this, the only cards that were really individually painted were the major arcana. The tarot is divided into the major arcana, the minor arcana, and the court cards. And she drew illustrations, painted illustrations of every card. I was clueless. I had no idea. And I have since, through the years, learned that Pamela Colman Smith died in poverty in England. More than 100 million copies of her deck have been made. I cannot even fathom 100 million. I can't even fathom 100 million people, much less 100 million decks. And when you go into a store now and you're looking for a set of tarot cards, you're going to see dozens, and they've all been painted. They're gorgeous. They are all different. Many of them have hardcover books that go with them that describe what the cards mean, because that's very important. You have to know what the cards mean. On the one hand, you need to find a deck that you like. You need to find what you are attracted to. But on the other hand, if you are a rank beginner, if you are trying to learn about the tarot from the get-go, as my grandmother used to say, you have to find the deck that is going to have the answers to your questions. And that's going to be the Rider-Waite deck, because there are so many books out there, and whenever the author of the book begins to show an illustration of the card or begins to talk about a specific card, more often than not, they're going to talk about Pamela Coleman Smith's deck. So that's what I recommend. You're going to buy a deck of 78 cards in a little box, and then you're going to get yourself to know these cards. And I carried them with me. My teacher suggested that I do that. And I carried them with me for several days, and I still carry them with me everywhere I go. I have a little pocket in my purse, and that's where they fit. And on the one hand, you have them because if somebody wants to have their cards read, well, hey, that's all you need is the deck of cards. But on the other hand, they go with you. These cards become part of your life. So I'm going to fast forward now to you have the deck, you got it home or wherever you are, and you have opened the box and you're looking at the cards. So now what you're going to do is you're going to divide the cards up into the major arcana, the court cards, the minor arcana. And I would suggest that you take the court cards and the minor arcana and put them back in the box. Because you're a beginner, and this is the easiest way for you to learn. You can begin today reading cards with the major arcana. The major arcana cards are a group of archetypes, and each one has a picture, and there are 22 of them. So I would suggest that you just work from those cards. I would suggest that if you are of the personality, I did not do this, and I should have. But then I went to classes, and I took a lot of notes, and I made lists, and I did all kinds of things with the cards in a learning process. But I was slowed down, I think, because my teacher had us use the whole deck, and it was really confusing to me. So that's what I would do. So you take the pages and you take the minor arcana cards and you put them back in the box. Now, the major arcana cards have names on them, such as Emperor, Magician, the Devil, the Star, the Chariot, the Moon, Judgment. That's what makes the major arcana cards. Now, the minor arcana cards have pictures, but they do not have any writing. They aren't listed. And the pages are a page of swords, a page of pentacles. That's what they're called right down in the bottom. Now, the tarot cards are, they come in 4 suits, just like a regular deck of cards. And you have, that's your minor arcana, so I wouldn't even worry about them to begin with. So you take these 22 cards and you look at them, and you realize that as you look at each one of these cards, you're looking at a picture. You're looking at a moment in time that was painted by Pamela Coleman Smith. So that's what you want to work on. And the bottom card, the most important card in the deck is the Fool. And the Fool, so you just pick up a card, any of these major arcana cards, you look at it, notice the colors, notice what you see. What do you see in the cards? Now, I chose the Fool because the Fool is, without a doubt, the strongest card in the deck. When somebody draws the Fool, you have got this guy with you for life. There are other cards that may be with you for a few weeks. They may be with you for a month or two. They may be with you for a moment or for an experience. If you're trying to buy a house, you may get the Justice card. That's gonna go with you while you are purchasing your home. But that one is a short-term card. But the Fool is with you for life. So just pick up any card in the major arcana cards and look at them. And what do you see, and what kind of things are you noticing as you pick them up? With the Fool, you see a lot of yellow. You see a little puppy dog. You see a rose. You see a tunic that has some decorations on it. And, you know, in the future, all of these things will be important to you, and you will know what each of these things mean. But for now, you're just looking at the card. And for example, that was the Fool. Then you go to the Tower. I used to call the Tower the take your job and shove it card, because it's a disaster. It's a total, but it is an event. The Tower represents a catastrophe that has happened in a moment. But then, as we look back on it, we realize it really wasn't a catastrophe. This had to happen in order for you to move forward. I know that as I look back in my life, maybe 50 years ago, I experienced the Tower. And I look back on it now, it's probably one of the best things that happened to me in my whole life. But at the time, the Tower had quite an impact. And we went through, as the Hudson Valley, in the Hudson Valley, we, as residents in the Hudson Valley, experienced a tower event with Superstorm Sandy and Hurricane Irene. Those two events completely rocked many, many people, as individuals, as families, however you divide us up. It really, but you know, as I was working with these people, because I was working with my neighbors and my friends, because during Hurricane Irene and Superstorm Sandy, people just woke up and their cars were inundated, their jobs were gone, their houses were gone. The grocery store in Boyceville was underwater for a couple, 3 months. I mean, it was just a real mess. And the town of Boyceville was completely changed as a result, and it was better for all of us, but it took a major adjustment for that to happen. So, but instead of worrying about what these cards are now, how you may think about these cards in 6 months or 5 years or something, just think about, what do you see in this card? What are the colors? What are the feelings that you get when you see this card? And focus on just describing the card itself. That's your first step, is just to get to know the major arcana cards by description. And then through time, you will have stories that go with these. And I suggest that you find a basic book, go to the library and check out a tarot book. And unless you just like to buy books, I would go to the library and I would spend some time reading library books about the tarot. And the reason I would spend some time about that is because you're going to read the book and you're going to get something out of that book, and then you may be motivated to move on to another book. And if you've blown $20 or $30, then you're still going to have this first book. And I'm not saying don't do it, because I have bought every tarot book that I have seen, that I have laid eyes on in the last 35 years. And I can remember that about 10 years ago, I realized that there were some of these books that they were no longer going to speak to me. And I was, because I do raise money at the flea market every summer, I took them to the flea market, and I must have taken 20 or 30 tarot books and just sold them for $1 a piece, because these were books that I had outgrown. So realize that your first tarot book, or first tarot books, you can get them at the library, because that's where you're gonna read it, you're gonna take a certain amount of information, and then you're gonna go on to the next one. I remember that I did have, one of my first books was a large book, and it had illustrations that were not colored, and then I was coloring them in, and that was a great thing, because color is an important thing in the tarot. And the colors are symbolic. And so one of the things that you will learn early in your path with tarot is what these colors mean to you, and how you can use these colors when you are reading cards for people. And by the way, you can start reading cards pretty quick. I mean, you're down to, when you first start out, you're down to 22 cards. So what you do is you ask the people, shuffle the cards and pull out a card, hand it to me. And then you tell them what you see in the cards. And you can say, I see, for example, this tower, and all these people are falling off, and there's a lot of dark blue, and then there's these leaves, these fire leaves, and you can see these different things, and as you read about them, you will read what the interpretations are. And so that's how you're going to easily learn to read cards. And usually when people first begin to read cards, they're straight up, I'm just learning, this is my first deck, I'm learning to read the cards, this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's happy to join in. And if you have a little notebook, you can quickly jot down the card and how you described it. And then through time, you'll be going to other books, and you will jot down other things, and you will have other meanings. So this is how you're going to work with the tarot at first. You're going to look at these cards, you're going to get some intuitive information about what you see, or you're not going to get anything. You're just going to read, well, this card is strength, and here is this woman who is got her hands in the mouth of a lion. So, and she's a very gentle soul, and she has got a lot of things going on in her life, and the sky is yellow, and so this is the card, and it's a calm reading, and you have the grass is green, and in the far off distance you have whatever. So this is how you're going to work with it. Here, for example, and this one in strength, you have a yellow sky, which you will come to realize is consciousness. But you also have the green earth of this card. And then you look back and you see some hills and mountains in the background. And take this card and instead look at the Empress. And the Empress has also got a yellow sky, but she is taking up most of this picture. This card is really about her, and you see a forest back there, and you see a lot. And in the front of this card, you see her feet and where they are, and you see the symbols that are there. You also see the color red, and her dress has pomegranates on it, which are wonderful spiritual symbols. And so the two cards together each show one person, and they show a woman, but they show totally different backgrounds. And if you go to another card, you can, for example, take Temperance and take the Chariot, or take the Moon. This is a very, very different card. These are two very, very different cards. You have here in this card, you have an archangel. You have these beautiful wings. You've got an angel there. This is a very religious card. And this is the message of this card at its lowest common denominator is, moderation in all things. But you've got an angel there. So this is very, very important. And then you've got the moon, and you don't even have a person in the moon. You have the moon, and it's in two different places. So the moon is sending you two different messages in that one card. And then you've got these animals in the beginning, and what do they count for? And then you've got these towers on each side of the card. And so you can see the cards are very, very different. So that's really your first job, is to get to know these cards, get to know how different they are, get to see all the different things that happen in these cards. Some of these cards don't even have people in them. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune, and it has animals. It doesn't have people. And then we have another religious card. There are religious cards, and here's another card that is religious. There you have another archangel. And so you've got all these religious motifs. And people, it's very, very interesting. Once in a while, once ever, 3 years or 2 years, and a number of people pass my booth at the flea market. But a number of people come up to me and they say, well, I don't do that. I'm religious, I don't do that. And finally, I have begun in the last year to say, well, that's very true, but I think of myself as a religious person too, and I read the tarot. And then I begin to say, I pull them out. I say, look, here's an archangel, and here's another archangel, and here is Archangel Gabriel, and this card is called Judgment, and that's from the Bible. And then we have a death card, and it has religious motifs to it. And so we do have a lot of religious symbols in the card. Here is the devil. There is the devil in the card, so that's certainly a religious card. And we have justice, which is definitely, Old Testament, New Testament, Christian, Jewish, whatever. There are a lot of different religious groups on the planet that deal with justice. And then we have the magician, who has played a part in the Bible. And so you have all of these religious symbols that are here. And I'm looking for one. We have one that was the rabbi, priest, and the pastor. But I have so many out here, it's hard to find them. But these are definitely the tarot, for someone who has not thought about it, is definitely Christian. It is definitely 15th century and is definitely Italian. And when you combine Christianity and the 15th century, you come up with Catholicism. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, it's real. And here we have the Hierophant, which is a very important card in the tarot. And this is your rabbi, priest, or pastor. Whatever your religious calling is, that's the card. So there's a lot, you're going to find a lot of religious symbols in this card. So that's what you're going to do. You're just going to use the major arcana only. And you're going to get stories. You are going to do readings for people. Just one or two cards, draw 3 cards, and what happens, past, present, and future. Or you draw one card, and this is your card for the day. The next thing that I would do is when you start reading in books, you're gonna go then to the pages. And a book, I tell you, some teachers in the tarot will tell you, take the pages, your page, your knights, your king, and your queen, and throw them out. And I don't say that. I just say get through the major arcana first, and then go to your pages, your court cards, and then go to your minor arcana card. And while we're talking about these different cards and categories of cards, if you are primarily reading cards for yourself, this is one book that you need to get from the library or possibly purchase. This woman has written the only book that I have found for reading tarot for yourself. And reading tarot for yourself is very, very different from reading tarot for a group of people or for a person. So this book is one of the, if you're at the stage in learning where you're just trying to figure out what's going on for yourself, this is the book to read. And if you are a person who is, for whatever reason, having struggles, or if people are coming up to you and saying, and you're offering to read their cards or whatever, and they're talking about how that's not what they do. There are 2 books out there that I'm going to suggest to you, and they may be in libraries. The first one is by Brittany Muller, and she has written a book called The Contemplative Tarot. The woman she started off, I think, as an Episcopalian, and she has become a Roman Catholic. And I will tell you, and this is an important thing for you to remember, put a star by this one. No one person controls the tarot message. They didn't control it back then, and they don't control it now. There are so many books written about the tarot, and everybody's got a different opinion. And this woman, I swear, I read her books a lot, and her book a lot. I don't read it from cover to cover. You read a page, or you read 2 pages, or whatever. But this woman has got this. She has got it card by card. And every time I read her card, a page, I just shake my head. I am just amazed. I ask myself, what in the world is going on? Her take on these cards is so different. And because her take on these cards is so different, then I feel I have to think. It makes me think. I can't just go read the book and say, oh, yeah. I have to, my gray cells work for that one. The second book that I recommend to you is a book called The Bible and the Tarot by Gil Stafford, who is an Episcopalian priest. And he is into the tarot. He talks about the tarot. If you go to his church, they're in his sermons. He has written this book. He's done a lot of things with the tarot, and he's very, very interesting. And when he talks about a tarot card, he will use biblical references. And I don't always, sometimes I ask, well, what made you think of that one? But I'm telling you, the man, he's very good. So these are the 3 cards, the 3 books that I would recommend that you try to find. And I'm sure you can find them in somebody's library. Now, as you go along and you start reading books about the tarot, you're going to have writers who talk about the message of the card, and then they talk about the reversed message of the card. Skip that one. Just go, don't even read that chapter, don't even read that paragraph, nothing. Just skip it totally. Because all it's going to do is confuse you. And not only is it going to confuse you, it's going to confuse your client. So as a beginner, as an intermediate, and as an advanced reader, I know a lot of people, when they talk about reversals in their books, if you really get into those books, you're going to find out they don't use them in their readings. They provide reversals because some editor told them they had to. But it's just too confusing. So definitely for a beginner, forget it. You may decide in the future that that's what you want to include. That's fine. But in the beginning, you just don't want to read it. Now, the next thing you want to do is look at these cards, whether it's the major arcana or the tarot cards, the court cards, or whether it's the minor arcana, whatever it is. Go after these cards by their color. What do these cards look like? What is it? Why is it that Pamela Coleman Smith spent so much time on these cards and put so much into the background? One of the things you're going to notice, for example, is her sword cards all have clouds. And this is a beginning. This is a little tidbit for a beginner here. These the swords are mental cards. So it deals with the person's outlook, their attitude, whatever. So when you look at the sword, you're going to know that you've got clouds, and that's what the person is thinking about and talking about. So we've got this cloud, for example. You've got the Page of Swords, and you've got these clouds are puffy. And then you've got a Knight of Swords, and these clouds are they're moving swiftly across the sky. They're almost racing across the sky. And that tells you a lot about the Knight of Swords. He's very fast moving. So look at the sky, pay attention to the sky as you read the cards. And pay attention to the colors. Because when you look here, for example, the Magician is yellow. The Tower is black. The Tower is black. The Devil, look at the Devil. Look at the black there. Well, the Tower is blue, but the Devil is black. So you see you see the color of the cards tells you about the cards. So your first job as a new card reader is to learn to just describe the cards as you see them. And the way you see them in the beginning is one way. 6 months later, a year later, you're going to see them in a totally different way. So that's how that's going to work. The next thing that you're going to do is you're just going to go from there. You're just going to get used to what you've got. If you have gone through the major arcana and you're comfortable with the major arcana, and then you go to the court cards, you've moved quite a bit. And the court cards are very, very interesting. Some of the people will tell you, forget the court cards, they're worthless. They are not. They're very, very interesting. Court cards represent people in somebody's life. I do readings all the time where up comes a court card and somebody will look and she'll say, oh, that's my son, or that's my daughter, or that's my niece. This person works for me. I mean, they're real. They identify them real. So that's very important. And then after a while, you're going to work with the minor arcana, and you're going to work with different, there's swords, and I've got the swords here now, so I'm going to work with these. Try working with a group of swords. You can't just do a reading with swords, but as you learn them, try to go with them. Try to learn what does a 2 of swords mean, what does a 4 of swords mean, what does a 10 of swords mean, and what does a 3 of swords mean. Try to go with it by category, which is a really nice, an easy way to learn. So I think that's pretty well done it all. One of the things I will say about swords, they are mental. And they're dramatic because they are mental. They have to do with our emotions. Another dramatic card for me, may not be dramatic for anybody else, is the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is a card that when it shows up, I'm always confused. Why is this card in this spread today? Because the Hanged Man showed up in this person's life probably 10, 20 years ago. And this person has been living this card for 10 to 20 years. Whereas another card, you may live a couple of months, just as you may live a couple of months. And the Sun, you live the Sun as a time in your life. It's a moment in your life, which is really, really fun. And the Chariot is with you for a couple of months. But the Hanged Man is there for 20 years, and he's a secret. And I sometimes wonder, why is it today? And I ask the people, and they never do answer me. I mean, it's a secret. They're not discussing it. They're not going to answer it. Also, if you're reading a book about the tarot, and you don't necessarily understand it, hey, put it away. That's why you go to the library, so you don't have to stick with it. A lot of books that I bought in the beginning, it took me, I had them 20 years before I got rid of them, but I had them for several years before I actually even read them because they were too advanced. Also, this is the one thing to remember about the tarot. There is nobody rules tarot. There is not one person who is the voice. Every tarot reader is his or her own voice. So every tarot reader is going to come up when you read a book, you're going to see things from that writer's vantage point, from that writer's eyes. And that's why it's important, I think, to read different cards and to go get your cards read. Because that way you see how somebody else works it. And I think that's real important. And if you have any questions, I do have one of my blogs. I'm now doing tarot a lot there. Reflexologyforthespirit.com. I know, reflexology, and here you are doing tarot. I have learned through the years that I've got this blog, I know how to work it. So this is the one I'm using. And it was my reflexology blog for years, and it was wellness. So now it's tarot, and at least I can use it. So, and I add pages to it 2 or 3 times a week. But I thank you very much for your time. I wish you happiness with tarot. It's a wonderful adventure to enjoy. And I also, if you happen to be in the Woodstock area this summer, I'm at the iconic flea market on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's pretty much the only place that I read tarot. But thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful evening.